Okay, hello everyone. So the next program in chapter 4 is population. Okay, so write a program that will predict the size of a population of organisms. The program should ask for the starting number of organisms, the average daily population increase as a percentage, and the number of days they will multiply. For example, a population might begin with two organisms. Organisms have an average daily increase of 50% and will be allowed to multiply for 7 days. The program should use a loop to display the size of the population for each day. Okay, so we have some input validation here, which we'll go through. We don't have to accept numbers less than 2 for starting size. We'll go through it. All right, so the program is first going to ask for three things. It's going to ask the user to enter a starting number of organisms. So we'll have a starting number of organisms. The average daily population, okay, what's the percentage growth or increase in population daily? Okay, so if it's, let's say, 50% or 70%. Now over here it says as a percentage. So if it's, let's say, 50% or 70%, the user is going to type in only 70. Okay, so you're going to ask the user to type in just the percentage. So the user is going to type in only 70, and then in the program we will actually divide it by 100 to get the decimal equivalent, so that we can use it in calculation. Okay, and then the number of days they will multiply. So the user is going to enter the number of days that you want to see the some kind of you want to see the growth. You want to see day 1 they will grow by this number, they will grow to this number. Day 2 they will grow to this number. Day 3. So how many days do you want to go and see, like how many days do you want the program to list for you, so that you can see how many organisms they are by let's say day 10, if you enter 10 days. Okay, so let me start by creating the program and we'll have a clear understanding of it. Okay, so I'll go ahead and create a class. I'll call it population. And then I'll create the main method. Okay, so the program is going to ask for user input. So because it's going to do that, let's go ahead and use the J option pane to ask for user input. I can use a scanner for this one, but I just want to use the J option pane, just so that I mix it around. In some programs I use a scanner, in some programs I use a J option pane. So for this one I'm just choosing to use the J option pane, but you can use a scanner for it. So to use the J option pane, we are going to import. We're going to import the J option pane class so that this program can have access to it. So to do that, it's going to import javax.swing.joptionPane. And with the J option pane, we don't have to create an object. Okay, like this kind of, we don't have to create an object. We just use it. Okay, so let's see the first thing we have to do. The program should ask for the starting number of organisms. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to ask for the starting number of organisms, and the way we do that with the J option pane is I'm going to use the J option pane's show input dialog to accept input from the user. So J option pane, let's show input dialog is going to accept input from the user. It takes one argument. Okay, I mean for the general default for the general argument it takes it's just the label that's going to display when this text box is popped up. Okay, this is what is going to display to the user. It's like a question. Okay, that's going to signal to the user what to type into the text box. Okay, so I'm going to ask the user to please enter the number of organisms. Let's see, it's starting organisms, right? Ask for the starting number of organisms. Please enter the starting number of organisms. Now we know the starting number of organisms. It's a number. It's a number. It's either 2, 3, 4, 5. So that means we have to we have to accept an integer. Basically, we need an integer because it's a counting number, like 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. Now, anything that the JOption pane returns, okay, anything that the user types over here is going to be returned as a string. But because we can't use strings in calculations, we need to convert that results that the user has typed into a number. For example, in this case, integer, so that we can use it in calculations. Now, so the user is going to enter an integer. So even if, for example, even if the user enters an integer over here, whatever is returned by the JOption pane inputs dialog, show inputs dialog, is going to be a string. So there's going to be a string. So we would have to go ahead and convert it to an integer. But first we need to take that string and then later on convert the string to an integer. So we need to go ahead and declare a string, just because whatever the input dialog, the show input dialog returns is a string. So I'm going to go ahead and declare a string, and I'm going to call it user input string. Okay, and I'm going to store the first or the thing that the user types, the inputs the user types in user input string. Even if the user types in a number, it's going to be stored in user input string as a string. So we need to go ahead and convert it to a number, in this case an integer, so we can use it in the calculation. So I'm going to use one of the methods in Java's wrapper classes, which is in this case integer. So it's going to be integer.parseInt, integer.parseInt. And what are we converting to an integer? We are converting the result in user input string. And once we convert user input string, once we pass, trying to illustrate this. Once we pass, the content of user input string to an integer, we need a place to store it. That result is going to be the starting number. So let's go ahead and create a variable that's going to hold a starting number. In this case, it's going to be an integer. So int, starting number of organisms. Starting number of organisms. I know it's a long name, but you can make it short if you want. All right, so now we're going to store the result the result in user input string. Convert it to an integer and store it in starting number of organisms. So now we will have the starting number of organisms. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, because we're going to ask for, I think, other information. So the next thing is we're going to ask for the average daily population increase as a percentage. So basically we're asking the user to enter some kind of percentage, but we don't want them to go ahead and type the decimals. We just want them to say, hey, if you know the percentage, if it's 20%, just type 20. If it's 50%, just type 50. If it's 1%, just type 1. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to, I'm sorry, let me undo this. Let me cut out stuff from this. So I've typed this. So we are going to use the JOption pane's show inputs dialog again to ask the user to enter. Please enter the daily population, or is it? Please enter the average daily population increase as a percentage. So please enter the average daily population increase as a percentage. As a percentage. So if it's 50%, just type 50. And then we're going to use the same idea over here. You're going to store the result in user input string, because everything that is returned from the JOption pane is a string, even if the user types in a number. Now in this case, the user can say 55%, or let's say, So think about it. Let's go ahead and store that also in an integer. Also as an integer. If it's, let's see. No, let's store that as a decimal. I'm sorry, as a double. as a double, because the user can say, the percent was, let's say, 55.5%. Okay, 55.5%. It's not always a clean number, like, let's say, a clean integer, like, let's say 55, 56, or 56. It can be 55.5. So let's go ahead and declare that as a double, not an integer, a double, because it's a percentage. Okay, so let's go ahead and declare a double variable. I'm going to call it percentage increase. Let's see, population increase as a percentage. So okay, population increase. Let's go ahead and do population increase. In order to make this sound or look reasonable in our program, let's say user percentage increase. Okay, user percentage increase. The reason why we are saying user percentage increases so that we know what the user typed. In this case, when we are referring to the user percentage increase, we know that the user didn't say the user didn't type. We know the user only typed the number. Okay, we know the user only typed, let's say, 50 or 20 to represent 20%, 50 to represent 50%. But then later on in the program, we will use our own code to calculate the actual percentage, which is going to be a decimal. Okay, and then we will name it something else. But for now, let's call this user percentage increase. Okay, so now when the user types in the percentage increase, we're going to store that in user percentage increase. Okay, it's going to be equal to what the user typed. Okay, because it's a double. This time, instead of integer.parseInt, we're going to say double.parseDouble. Double.parseDouble. And what we are passing into a double in this case will be user input the content in user input string, like this. So now by this point we'll have the starting number of organisms, the user percentage increase, and I'm going to go ahead and copy this whole string because we're going to ask for another input, which is going to be and the number of days they will multiply. So now we are going to ask for how many days they will multiply. How many days of information do you want to see of organisms multiplying? So I'm going to go ahead and ask that too. Please enter the number of days they will multiply. Okay, they will multiply. Okay, so again, what the user types, okay, even if it's a number, it's going to be stored as a string because whatever the show input dialog returns is a string. So we need a variable to hold that. I'm going to store it in user input string. But because we can't use strings in calculation, we need to go ahead and convert that number to an integer because we are dealing with the number of days here. Okay, so we want to go ahead and pass it into an integer like this. So I'm going to go ahead and copy integer.parseInt and paste it here. Sorry, that was my phone. So we're going to go ahead and pass what is in user input string into an integer, and once we do that, we need to go ahead and store it in a variable. We need a place to store it. Okay, so user input string is going to convert what is stored in here, and this was when we're asking them the number of days they'll multiply. So let's go ahead and create an integer variable and call it number of days. Number of days. We can call it anything, but let me say number of days. Let's just call it number of days. Okay. Let's just call it number of days. Okay. We know the number of days is the number of days they'll multiply. You can call it something that makes sense to you. So I'm going to go ahead and store the result of the number of days that the user typed in number of days. Okay, so now we have all three variables. And let's see what the question says. So for example, a population might begin with 2 organisms, have an average daily increase have an average daily increase of 50% and will be allowed to multiply for 7 days. The program should use a loop. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create a loop. Now the loop is going to start from day 1. So I'm going to initialize a variable, declare and initialize a variable to 1, because we are starting from day 1. We are going through the number of days that the user types. So if the user typed in 7 days, we are starting from day 1 to the number of days the user typed, and every day we want to see how many organisms, okay, you know, or how many the organisms have multiplied to. Okay, so that's what we are doing. We are starting from day 1. That's why I declared and initialized this variable to 1. And as long as day is less than or equal to the number of days, then do what's in this loop. And before you come back and check if day is less than or equal to number of days, add 1 to day. Okay, so for this loop, what this loop is going to basically do is it's going to go through each day and do what's in what the code will write in here. So we started from day 1 and going through number of days. Number of days is the number of days that the user typed, and each time this loop comes back around, days increase to 1. So by the time this loop is done, we would have gone through from day 1 to the number of days. So each day there's something we want to do, and that's what we're going to write over here. So I'm going to, I just wanted to show that's what we're going to write over here. I'm deleting that. Okay, so the program is going to use a loop to display how many the organisms have multiplied to, basically, each day. So if they are starting with 2 organisms on day 1, then day 2, since the user typed in, let's say if the user typed in, let's say 50%, then it's going to be 50% of the 2 organisms, and day 3, that's how many organisms there are going to be. All right, so first let me go ahead and create, I'll do that later just so I don't confuse anyone. Let's go ahead and create, so day is going to keep track of how many, basically the days. Okay, it's going to keep track of the days, but the population basically is, we need that too. We need a variable to keep track of that. So basically it's going to say day 1 is equal day 1. Okay, there are 2 organisms. Okay, we have the starting number of organisms here. We have days keeping track of the number of the days. And we have the starting number of organisms here. I don't want to use the starting number of organisms, because the way I'm going to write this code here, the starting number of organisms, the value of the starting number of organisms will change, and I don't want to use the starting number of organisms, because if it changes, then it no longer becomes a starting number of organisms. So this name wouldn't be a good name to reference it. This is just to accept the starting number of organisms from the user. So I'm going to transfer the content of starting number of organisms into another variable that makes more sense, and then use it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another variable. I'm going to call it population. Okay, so double population. Let's say, no, not population, let's say daily population. I'll call it daily population because that's really what it is. It's a daily population. This variable is going to hold the daily population. So today the population is 2. Tomorrow the population is 4. The next day the population is 25. The next day the population is 100. This variable is what's going to hold the daily population. Okay, so I'm going to transfer the content or the starting number of organisms into daily population. So daily population is now going to be equal to the starting number of organisms, like this. Okay, so because I'm going to, this daily population is going to be an accumulator. Okay, it's going to be an accumulator because we're going to use the same variable to basically how do I put this? We can break it in different steps, but it's the same thing. Okay, I'm transferring the contents of starting number of organisms here, and after that we wouldn't need starting number of organisms again. We wouldn't need it. So I'm transferring it here. So daily population is, so on day 1 the daily population is going to be this daily population. On day 2 the daily population is going to be the 50%. Let's say if the user typed in 50%, it's going to be 50% of the daily population, and then we're going to store the result back in daily population. Okay, but if I didn't create the daily population, we would have used starting number of organisms. We would have said on day 1 the starting number of organisms is what's in there. Okay, it's the value in there. But on day 2, then it's going to be, if the user entered 50%, it's going to be 50% of what's already stored in here. We're going to store the result back in starting number of organisms. But it wouldn't make sense to store day 2, the population of day 2 into starting number of organisms, because in that case, it wouldn't be the starting number of organisms. It will be the population, the daily population for day 2. And that's why I'm creating a daily population variable for that. I hope you understand. I hope I didn't confuse anyone. Okay. So now remember, the user typed in, for the percentage increase, the user typed in like a raw number, let's say 20 or 50 or 30. Now that's not the percentage. Okay, it's just the number to make it simple for the user to type in. We don't want the user to just put 20 divided by 100 on the calculator and then figure it out. No, if the user knows the percentage and let's say it's 20, just type 20. But now we have to take that number and convert it to an integer. So convert it to a percentage. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create another variable. And remember, this variable was user percentage increase. But I'm going to create, another variable, and I'm going to say percentage increase, the real percentage increase. You can say actual percentage increase, but the real percentage increase, which is percentage increase, is going to be equal to, we'll do that here, but I named this percentage increase. So let's go ahead and calculate the percentage increase. Because the user typed in just a raw number, percentage increase now is going to be equal to what the user typed, which is just a raw number, which is user percentage increase divided by 100. And that's going to give us a decimal. That's going to give us the percentage, which is in a decimal form, so we can use it in calculations. All right, so let me look at one thing here. Let me just cross-check one thing here. Yeah, so we are asking for the average daily population increase. Okay, so it's fine. Is it population increase, percentage increase? I'm trying to think of what to call it, just so it makes sense. It's percentage increase makes sense because it said as a percentage. So the first one is user percentage increase. That's what the user typed as a percentage increase, which is 50 or 20, just a raw number. And we are actually calculating our percentage increase. That's also a percentage increase, but divided by 100. So it makes sense. So now we have the daily population in a variable here. This daily population is going to start by holding the starting number of organisms. If it's, let's say, 2 organisms, this daily population is going to hold 2. Percentage increase is now going to hold the real decimal equivalent of what the user typed. So the user typed 20%. We are going to divide that 20% by 100 and store that here, so we can use it in calculations. So in the loop for day 1, we know that the variable day holds 1. So we're just going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and print out. I opened this too much. I'm going to close it. We're going to print out the day and print out the population increase, but we need to calculate the population increase. But let's see, for day 1, first, because we know the starting number of organisms, for day 1, the starting number of organisms is going to be, let's say it's going to be what the user typed for starting number of organisms. So let's print out that first. Let's go ahead and print out that first. So system.out. We are using a G-option pane, so I'm not going to use system.out.print. G-option pane has a show message dialog, which is going to just display that. So I'm going to do that. G-option pane dot show message dialog. Oops, I'm sorry, my typing is just it's bad. So the first argument the show message dialog takes, is the first argument that the show message dialog takes is now. Now there are other arguments, but I'm using null, and what null does is it's going to center the window in the screen. And the second argument is what you want to display. Now in this case, I want to display what is stored in day, which is going to keep track of the day. I'm going to concatenate it with a tab. Okay, so I'm going to put \t. The \t is a tab. Okay, and I'm going to now type the population increase, or now print the population increase. Remember the population, I'm sorry, I don't even have a variable called population increase. I don't know why I keep on saying population, or I don't know why I said population increase. Okay, I'm sorry. We are using the daily population. The daily population initially holds the starting number of organisms. So daily population, this is what we are going to print, daily population. So we are printing the day, so it's going to initially start off as 1, and the daily population is going to initially be what's the data type for starting number of organisms. Okay, after we've printed that, now we need to calculate the daily population for the following day. Now when this loop goes back up, day is going to be 2. So now automatically day will be keeping track of the day, but we need to calculate the daily population for the next day. So daily population is going to be equal to daily population itself. It's going to be equal to the whatever is stored in daily population, okay, plus, okay. Now I'm going to put this in parentheses and do a calculation, or type a calculation here. So daily population is equal to whatever is stored in daily population plus the result of the percentage increase, the actual percentage increase. Okay, so if the user typed in 50, okay, it's going to be 50 over 100, and that's what's going to be stored here. Okay, that's what's going to be stored here. So it's going to be 0.5, right? Okay, it's going to be 0.5. And 0.5, okay, so if you type in, let's say, 50%. Okay, so 0.5 is the same as 50%, all right? So when I do this calculation and I say percentage increase times, okay, times user, let's see, times daily population, times daily population. This percentage increase here basically means whatever the user typed. If the user typed in 20 over 100, 20 over 100 is the same as 0.2. 0.2 is the same as 20%. Okay, so when we say, or when I say percentage increase times daily population, it means 20% of daily population. You can read the multiplication sign as off. So whatever the user typed, if the user typed in 50 over 100 is going to be 0.5. 0.5 is the same as 50%. So this is going to read as 50% of the daily population. Initially it started as 2, so it's 50% of 2, and we are adding it to what is already stored in the daily population. Okay, and then that's going to be the daily population for the following day, because the user said, because we asked the user to type in the average daily population for day 2, and they typed it in. The average daily population of the organisms. Okay, daily population increase. We asked them for the average daily population increase. This is the question here. I keep on mixing it up. We asked the user to enter the average daily population increase as a percentage. So we know that's what they typed. Let's say 20% or 50%. So we are calculating 50% of what the population is right now, to get the population for the next day. And then we are calculating 50% of that whole population to get the population of the following day, and so on and so forth. So daily population is going to be equal to whatever daily population is plus 50%, or if indeed the user typed in 50% or 50 of the daily population of whatever is stored in daily population. So we are taking that result and adding it to already what is stored in daily population, and storing it as the population for the following day. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So let me terminate this line. So after we've printed the first initial starting number of organisms, we're going to calculate the daily population for day 3, day 4, day 5, until we get to the number of days that the user typed. And then that's it. So we are almost done. Let me go ahead and terminate that extra thread that is caused by the G option pane. So anytime you use the G option pane, you have to call system.exit. And system.exit is basically going to terminate the extra thread that is caused by the G option pane. Okay, so I'm going to pass in 0, and 0 is basically I'm passing in 0. I can test on this the return value of this method and see if I go to 0. And if I go to 0, it's an indication that the program ran successfully, got to this line, and returned a 0. Okay, so now I've terminated that. A couple of things we need to do. We have input validation here. So the first input validation is do not accept a number less than 2 for the starting size of the population. Which is the starting number of organisms. We shouldn't accept any number less than 2 for the starting number of the population. We can't do that. All right, so let's try to fix that. So first, the program is going to ask the user, please enter the number of organisms. The user is going to type in the number of organisms, which is going to be stored here. So let's create a while loop. Okay, right after it, and say, now let's create a while loop, not an if statement, because an if statement, no matter the result, is going to continue running. But we don't want the program to run if the input is wrong. We want the program to get it right, fix it first before I can move on. Okay, fix it first, make sure the value is right first before the program can move on. So while the starting, because we will have it stored in there, the user will type it, we'll have it stored in starting number of organisms. So while the starting number of organisms what did the input validation say? It said do not accept a number less than 2 for the starting size of the population. So anything less than 2. Yeah. So whilst the starting number of organisms is less than 2, then let's go ahead and ask the user again. First of all, let's go ahead and display a message. Let's go ahead and display an error message and say system.out.println and say that error. Okay, and say error or input error. Input error, and we are going to say please enter a number above 2. Okay, please enter a number 2 or above. Please enter a number 2 or above. Okay, it can't be less than 2. And once we display the error, let's give them an opportunity, another chance to type it in again. So let's go ahead and ask again. We can even change the print statement and say please enter a number please enter the number of organisms, and then we can say in parentheses 2 and above. Now this message is only going to display this 2 and above. The first one won't display that. The first one is just going to display a regular message. This one is going to display an error message, and it's going to stress or add some details to the question, so the user now knows. Please enter a number 2 or above. That's the error message. Now please enter. I'm using the system. I'm mixing the system.out.print with the G option pane. So I should change this to G option pane. I can actually add it in the string here. Let's go ahead. I can add it in this string. If you're using the scanner, then you can use system.out.print. But I'm using the G option pane, so I want to mix everything. I want to use type my messages or output messages using the G option pane. To be precise, show input dialog. So if that's the case, if the number is less than 2, then let's type the error here and say hold on, let's say error please enter a number less than 2. Sorry. now I'm actually causing them to actually to always get an error. Not less than 2. Please enter a number 2 and above. 2 and above. Let me go ahead and concatenate, break this line to another line. So I'm basically breaking it to another line like this by concatenating the first string to the second string. Okay. So it's going to say error, please enter a number 2 and above, and then it's going to break the line. But I want to also now this first thing I did is just to break the line on the screen. In the program, I want to also break the line using a new line character. So this whole thing displays on a new line. This whole please enter the starting number displays on a new line. I can even create 2 line breaks so that the arrow will display. There will be 2 line breaks, and then this message will also we'll ask the user again. We will give the user a chance to enter again and say, please enter the starting number of organisms. But we'll even add an extra message only when the user gets it wrong or doesn't type the right number. 2 and above.